normal.
Do we have anybody in the room? Yes, we do. Hey, nice to see you. Thank you for raising all your hands. I'm just trying to make sure that we've got people able to see what we're doing on YouTube.
It's showing on YouTube, yeah.
Is it? Oh, fantastic. I can see it. Amazing. Oh, and there's my face. Hi, everybody. So welcome to our event this evening. We have got some amazing panelists and we're really excited about tonight's event. So this is a spotlight on roles in tech from Code and Black Females. We've got a few slides here so that you can see what's coming up, but just to give you a quick insight, Code and Black Females is a community of Black women in tech. And that's Black women in tech all over the UK, and now we're getting people from around the world as well. So we're super excited about that. We run events regularly. We have loads of networks and ways to communicate with people. So we've got a WhatsApp group, we've got a Slack group, we've got loads of ways to get in touch and loads of ways to share information and showcase talent. We're super excited about that. We've also got a bootcamp that's going to be coming up in, when is the bootcamp coming up? The beginning of August. So we're looking forward to that. That's going to be in the West Midlands, and that's for Black women to learn to code. It's a 30-week bootcamp, and it will be part-time. So we're really looking forward to that. So if you want more information about that, it's called Black Coder. You can go to the Coding Black Females website and find out more information. I'm going to hand over to Faith, who is running this session. If you've got any questions you want to ask, post them in YouTube Live if you're on YouTube, and we'll make sure they get through. Otherwise, use Slido, but Faith is going to tell you all about that. I'm going to stop sharing, guys.
Hi, everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Faith. I'm a software developer at Sky. I did a career switch about almost a year ago now. And I'm also a volunteer with Coding Black Females. So today is my first time hosting, so bear with me if I'm stuttering, but hopefully not. So today our event is to really put the spotlight on areas of technology which aren't kind of the quintessential kind of coding to create a web app or a kind of mobile app, kind of looking at other pieces of technology, other roles that exist, because there's loads of them. So today we've got 4 speakers, and how it's going to work is that for each area, of which there are 4, each speaker will have about 15 minutes. Half of that will be kind of speaking, and then half of that will be to answer your questions around that specific area. And then hopefully at the end, there'll be about 15 to 20 minutes to kind of mop up any last questions or to ask any questions that kind of applies to all of the speakers. So as Charlene said, if you're on Zoom, you can use the question and answer feature at the bottom. If you're on YouTube, you can use the like the conversation area, or you can use this way. You can use the Slido link. So if you go to sli.do and enter the code 45500, you can kind of ask questions there. Or if someone's asked a question that you're interested in, you can upvote it. And it will just help if you tell us which area or which speaker your question is directed to. Okay, so let's get started. So the first area we're going to be looking at is DevOps, and our speaker is Yasmin Taylor. Yasmin is a platform engineer and a backend engineer, and she's the author of a recent blog post that went viral titled "A Guide to Becoming a DevOps Goddess." So she's the perfect person to tell us all about DevOps. So over to you, Yasmin.
Hi guys, really excited to come on this panel. I was so happy to be selected because I've been kind of like a part of the Coding Black Females WhatsApp group for a long time. I've seen how they've grown, and it's just great that we're finally showcasing different talents in tech, and like Faith said, the different areas of, or the unseen areas of tech. So to get into stuff, my name is Yasmin Taylor. I work as a DevOps engineer. So a lot of people are wondering, what is a DevOps engineer? And after I posted a blog post, I had quite a lot of people, dare I say, annoyed, because it just seems like as soon as you want to put one foot in and wanting to go into tech, there's like a crazy new name that kind of pops up. So just to kind of like clarify things, DevOps or development operations is actually a methodology that you work towards. So I'm not sure if a lot of you are familiar with certain processes such as like Scrum. You can be a Scrum Master, Prince2 for your project management, or ITIL for service line support roles or service delivery. DevOps somehow has just been changed into a methodology, and now it's a job role. So in essence, the background needed to kind of be into DevOps can be anything from software engineering to project engineering or to implementation. I decided to come through via the implementation route. So you've got two types of DevOps people. You've got a DevOps person that comes from a software engineering route. They're proficient in a major language, such as Python, Java, HTML, which is very unlikely. And those are the three languages. And in essence, you are a software engineer. And then you use your knowledge of your languages to then adhere to the DevOps procedure to help automate and improve efficiency within any company that you're working with. So a lot of the keywords that you hear in DevOps is creating CI or CD pipelines, and this is continuous integration and continuous deployment pipelines. So you are using a language such as Python to automate these efficiencies and automate these kind of pipelines to deployment or releases. And then you've got other tools such as Octopus, TeamCity that you can kind of work on. And the main cloud providers that you can work on within the DevOps model are AWS, which is Amazon, Azure, which is Microsoft, GCP, which is Google, and I think there's Alibaba, but that's hardly ever used. Then you've got somebody like me that's come from a background from implementation. So it's more so kind of client management, going onto client site and having the ability to explain technical issues in layman terms, whilst at the same time having a bit of a knowledge about coding to implement these into your everyday software cycles, if that needed be. So I always make a joke. I know how to code in Python, Java, C#, and HTML, but I wouldn't say I'm a master of all languages. And if anything, you will notice that when you kind of get into DevOps, depending on your level of seniority, a lot of roles have already got their back form engineering team already that kind of handle all the coding. So you, if anything, just need the mindset to know how to code and where to kind of put things are. So you can easily kind of be put in a category. You're kind of like a copy and paste coder, where a client's like, oh, we've got an 808 issue. Okay, let me go and Google and see what that is and copy and paste in there. So yeah, that's why I would say I kind of do day to day.
How did you get into DevOps? Was it something you kind of wanted to do from the beginning, or did you fall into it?
To be honest with you, I fell into it about a year ago. Like I said, it's a methodology that people work towards. I used to be a contractor, so one day I got a call from an Australian company. I went to interview them originally as a third line infrastructure engineer or implementation consultant, and they were just like, hey, you've done really well, but we think you'll be better suited for another role. And I was kind of like, okay, cool, want the job either way, it's more money, so what is that role? And they were just like, oh, a cloud engineer working within our DevOps function. And that's literally how I kind of got thrown into it. So it's kind of like the title was given to you and you do different stuff on the back end to kind of get there. But I did have to brush up on my Python skills. I did have to kind of like brush up and get certified in different cloud technologies, and just to kind of know how different cloud interfaces work.
So you kind of mentioned knowing a bit of coding, and kind of you mentioned also kind of liaising with clients as well. Are there other key skills that you would say particularly suit someone who's working in DevOps?
I think it's great to kind of know about security aspects. So for instance, ISO 27001 is kind of like a certification that companies go through just to make sure that they are security compliant, if that makes sense. It's great to know about that, because a lot of instances when you are working within a DevOps environment within the cloud, you have to make sure that your company or your migration processes are kind of like security tight. So I'll definitely say to know about a bit of certain elements of cybersecurity and operations. I think it's quite good to know about different methodologies within the Prince2 or project management lifecycle, such as working in an agile way, working in a rigid way, or working in a waterfall way. And most importantly, if you are coming from a software engineering side, is to be quite proficient in the main language that is used are Linux, so as in Bash command lines and Python.
So we've got a couple of questions. Tara's just asked you to clarify what you mean by implementation.
Great. So implementation can be you're a technical person working in a company, but you're working in a software company. And this software company is selling a software, and you need to implement this software into the client that has bought it. So for instance, you can have a software that's around GDPR, ensuring that your websites are GDPR compliant. That's already been built by the company. Implementation is literally the technical process of implementing that software into your client's technical environment using whatever language is compliant with what they use.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, Tara. We've got another question from Ava. What's the study/graduate route to this career path?
It's like I said, DevOps is a methodology, but I would say study computer science, and I would say study computer science and maybe machine learning, because there's a new kind of sector of DevOps where it's like AI ops, where it's kind of using data science and data engineering and Python, if that makes sense. Or I'm not sure if you can study software engineering in uni, but either way, I think the route to take to kind of go into DevOps is studying computer science.
You mentioned having a few kind of certifications. Do you think that's completely necessary, like to have a AWS certificate or kind of any other certificates that are out there?
Yes and no. In my situation, because I had been working around different methodologies and cloud technologies, a lot of companies were willing to kind of take me on without certification, because I proved that I can kind of work in those environments. But in order to kind of, if you are quite new into tech and you want to go straight into DevOps, it makes sense to kind of go out of your way and get a certification, just to show that I've got the passion, I've got the zeal, and I'm kind of like willing to learn. And I think employees would be a bit more comfortable knowing that you have a certification and are willing to invest in you. But if you are coming from a more experienced place, maybe like myself, you can get away without the certification, but you realize that, you know, the more deeper you are in kind of like the DevOps world, a certification is the key to about an extra 20 or 30K in your salary. So I would say it benefits you long term.
Someone's just asked how do they go about getting a certificate? Is it something you can do online, or is it?
Yeah, if you just go on aws.com or even just Google AWS Cloud certificate, it will show you what certificates to get in what order. So for instance, if you are quite a novice to the field, you would get a foundation and XYZ, and you can kind of do the same on Microsoft and Google. I would say going forward, if I had to pick for you 2 certifications to get within the cloud sector, I would say go with GCP and AWS.
Okay. Just going through these questions. Someone's asked, how long were you working in kind of implementation or previous tech roles before going into technology? Sorry, before going into DevOps.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, that's me.
How long was I working in?
Kind of other tech roles.
Right, so I started working at 18, but it was as a IT sales executive. Then I graduated at 21 from AI and robotics. And then I went into a business development role for, at the time, it was Office 365, which was kind of the first, it wasn't necessarily the cloud, but it was the first introduction of serverless environments. So I would say I've been working fully in tech since I've been about 21 years old. I'm 27 now, and I've been working within implementation and cloud technologies for about 3 years now, indirectly.
Okay, so Julia's asked, is it better to start to work in a small company or a big one if somebody wants to work in DevOps?
Well, I would say it really depends on your graduate degree. If you are in uni, if you are in university and you manage to graduate with a 2-1 or first, especially from like one of the big fours, it will probably be easy for you to gain an apprenticeship or internship at Deloitte or whatever, to go straight into DevOps, and they'll probably give you certifications. If you're like myself that only graduated from a 2-2, but in a specialized degree, or you graduated or you have work experience in anything other than tech, it's probably best to go for a small company. And the reason why I'll say that is, 1, the competition is lower. 2, smaller companies tend to give you responsibilities a bit quicker. So if you were to build your junior experience in a smaller company for about a year or 2, by the time you would have left and you can apply for bigger companies, you would have learned a bit more to kind of like boost yourself up in regards to salary, if that makes sense. So that's kind of like the route I would take.
Mute. So you may have kind of answered this, but just to be explicit, for someone who's self-taught and not come through the uni route, what would you recommend for them as first steps?
I would say, I know that QA Learning is doing like an apprenticeship in getting into DevOps. I would say if you do want to get into DevOps and you are self-taught, just kind of like really draw down on your Python. That's what I would say. Really, really draw down on your Python. Go and get your AWS certificates. Even if you don't understand it, just revise for it and hopefully you'll pass. And then you can present yourself to employers. I would also advise to go for quite a lot of open source projects or freelance projects. So kind of like after learning how to code, just making up your own Python or any other kind of like technical project. So you've built your portfolio. So in the end, you would have had your AWS or Azure certification, you're self-taught in Python to a certain point, and then you've got projects to kind of like show, regardless of whether that's paid or unpaid.
Are there any online tutorials that Maria's asking?
Yeah, I wrote about this in my blog. So Udemy are quite good in DevOps, and they'll kind of like teach you different tools that you can use alongside. Eureka or Uderica is quite good. Pluralsight is actually giving a free course on like DevOps and all things Python, hence due to the COVID situation. And I know Harvard are giving out like free, I don't know if it's free, but online courses on computer science.
And we've got a last question. Sorry, I was going to say the last question, but two more have come in. So we've got 3 questions here. What is the hardest part about working in DevOps?
For me, the hardest part about working in DevOps is just the fact that it's a new field. So, you know, they're still trying to kind of like, I feel, figure out what exactly is DevOps because it is a methodology. So you've got DevOps role that you apply for, and they're strictly just software engineering roles, and you might not be as technical for that. You've got some DevOps roles that expect you to kind of be like this rock star, tech superstar or unicorn that want you to code in 5 languages. And then you've got other DevOps that are not necessarily DevOps. It's kind of like site reliability or platform engineering that has the same title as DevOps, but it's more people focused and consulting. So there's been a number of times when I've been applying for jobs within DevOps, and my confidence has been knocked because, you know, they really just want a senior backend engineer. But for some reason, they've just kind of changed the name. So I would say that's probably the hardest part about working in DevOps. And apart from that as well, it can be quite male dominated because sometimes they do hire people that are secretly software engineers, and if you're quite young you can kind of feel like out of place. But other than that, I think it's a great industry to work in. I would say that right now I do feel like DevOps is kind of being split up between DevOps, data engineering and data science. So yeah, it really depends.
What would you say you enjoy most about DevOps?
What I enjoy most, what I enjoy most about DevOps is the concept of automation. It's all about making things a bit more seamless and automated for clients. And it's just really cool how you can use different languages to do that. It does kind of make you feel like a rock star tech superstar because you are kind of like adhering a methodology to a coding language, if that makes sense. And people really look up to you. So that's why I'm liking it about it.
So we've probably got time for one last question in this section. So when you graduate, so I don't know who's answered this, but when you graduate in computer science, what stuff should someone do to be more employable in DevOps when you don't have a placement? So how can someone make themselves more employable? I guess the certificates would be one thing.
Yeah, certificates, open source projects, knowledge about the cloud and its uses. So yeah, that's how I would say.
Okay, there aren't any questions now, but there might be later. So thank you, Yasmin. So now we're going to move on to UX and UI design. And for that, we have Jayde-Olivia Sandy talking for us. So Jayde-Olivia is a UI designer at Sky. She also has experience in UX, print and branding. So she's going to speak to us now.
Oh, hi. Sorry. Sorry, I've got like a presentation to share with you guys. So I'm just gonna share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see it. So I'm just going to be talking about what UX design is, but I'll start by sharing a little bit about me and what I do. So I'm a user interface designer at Sky. I come from a visual design background with, I did a degree in graphic design, visual communications, and I have almost 7 years experience across UX, UI, print and branding. I'm going to be talking to you about what UX design is, some of the skills and traits that would be useful to you as a UX designer, UX in relation to UI, how to build a UX portfolio, and other useful things that you might need to know. So what is UX design? Some people don't know, but UX stands for user experience design. Sorry, it's looking at how users experience interact with a product from beginning to end, making experiences as simple as possible for users. And you do this through storyboards, wireframes, mock-ups, prototypes, user testing and research. Sorry. Yeah, what skills and traits are useful for a UX designer? So it's important to be passionate about UX design. So you should be genuinely fascinated by patterns and the way things work and how users interact with a product. You should be empathetic. You should be able to put yourself in their shoes. So design great products, you need to be able to feel a user's pain and frustrations. You should be humble, because working as a UX designer, you'll have to collaborate and work with a lot of other people, and they may not necessarily be UX designers. So it's important for you to be an advocate for UX design and to teach them. You also have to take on feedback from people and manage that feedback and figure out how to apply it to your work without kind of taking it personally. You should be inquisitive and always ask why, and also be interested in like the data and insights behind the product that you're working on. And then you can also find out how your designs impact the business. And you should have a genuine interest in technology. So the future of technologies and the way humans interact with technology. So as a UI designer now, I just want to talk about how UX and UI connect. So UX and UI are not the same thing. UX looks at how things work, how it works, and UI looks at what it looks like, what the product looks like. So at Sky, UX and UI are separate roles, but there are a lot of companies where it's a hybrid role, so you'll work on both. UX encompasses UI, so they work together as two parts of a whole, and knowing both will be beneficial to you in your career. And UX design helps to validate visual designs. So I was talking to somebody at work recently, and we were talking about how visual design can be subjective, but knowing UX design as a UI designer will help to validate your designs. And yeah, a product that only considers UI and not UX is useless. So I just want to talk a bit about how to build a UX portfolio. So a lot of visual designers will write a short summary of their project and then show visuals and mock-ups. But as a UX designer, it's important to think about your projects as case studies. and to always show your process. So the process that I use, the structure that I use for my portfolio is to define the problem or the challenge, show my whole process, including any setbacks that I come across throughout the project, and to show the visual solution at the end and the impact of your designs. And that's where having a relationship with data teams can be useful to you, so you can actually see how things have improved or how things have changed due to the designs that you've implemented. I would also recommend documenting your journey, documenting your projects as you go along, and taking pictures. So like in meetings or any workshops that you do, take pictures of those and then you can put them in your portfolio. You should create prototypes as well to put in your portfolio to show that you've thought about interactions and journeys. And when you first start your career, you may not have a lot of projects in your portfolio, but you can always build this up by doing design challenges or creating concepts for websites and apps that already exist. And something that I've always been told is that less is more. So you can have a portfolio with three to four really strong projects and make them look as good as possible. And that's much better than having loads of projects that are like average. And then you need to choose projects that will best showcase the skills that you have as a designer and then build from there. And then I've just come up with a list of useful websites, blogs, and Instagram pages that I follow that have helped me over the last couple of years that have a lot of useful information. And these are a couple of books that I have as well that are really handy that people have recommended over the years. And I thought I would end with a nice little quote. How do I explain what I do at a party? The short version is that I humanize technology. And that's the end.
Thank you, Jade. So we've got a couple of questions here. What tools do you use to help you design a website application?
So I use Sketch. That's something that we use at Sky to design. But I've also used Photoshop in the past and also Illustrator. But I think Sketch is probably one that a lot of companies are using mostly now.
Okay, and then somebody else has asked, how do you suggest learning how to graphic design to start creating projects? I'm completely new to it and trying to teach myself.
Okay, so I would say there are a lot of really, really good books out there. So read a lot of books, and also you can teach yourself how to do tutorials on YouTube. And also reach out to somebody maybe on LinkedIn or at your job or something, someone that knows something about design, and they can kind of help you and mentor you and give you feedback on projects that you do.
Amazing. Christiana, I hope I said that. Christiana's asked, what is the best way to go about learning UX practices? Would those be in the books and links that you've mentioned?
Yeah, so again, I would say the books, and I don't know if I can share a list of some of the books that were on the presentation, but yeah, reading the books will really help you and kind of just putting it into practice. So find a project that you want to work on, like a website or an app that you want to redesign, and put those processes into practice through the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I guess we can try and share the slides with the books and all those recommendations on to everyone who's attending and who wasn't able to get a screenshot of that. Another question, how do you incorporate accessibility into your designing? So
at Sky, so I'm just going to try and go back to the books. Yeah, at Sky, they have testers and researchers and stuff, but it's something that is also good for you to know as a designer. So I would say more reading and kind of knowing what you're looking for in your design. There are some plugins that are good to use on Sketch that will show you things about colors and contrast and that kind of thing. But reading a lot of books and blog posts will let you know what you're supposed to be looking for.
Judith has asked, is it good to have front-end experience to move into UX UI design?
So I've kind of heard a lot of people going into UX design from a lot of different backgrounds. So I wouldn't say that you necessarily need to have front-end experience, but it would be beneficial to you if you do have like visual design experience. You don't have to have it, but it will help you in what you're designing.
Okay. And I guess, what would you say you enjoy most about your role?
I would say I really enjoy learning and learning from other people. So I've recently moved into quite a big design team with a lot of different roles and different people. So like copywriters, UX researchers. So learning about what they do really interests me as well. Because although my focus is visual design, I do still have a passion for UX. So yeah, just learning and kind of understanding the way that people interact with products.
And what would you say is the most difficult thing about your role or area?
So I would say in the past, it has been kind of collaborating with people that don't fully understand what your role is. So you have to kind of get them on board and take them on a journey so that they can understand what it is that you do. Because a lot of people don't really understand the importance of UX design or UI design.
Somebody has asked us here, can you run us through an average day?
An average day, now that we're at home. So I'll run you through an average. I've recently moved into a new role, so I'll just run you through like an average day in this new role. So we start off our day by having a morning stand up with all of the design team, so the UX designers and the UI designers, just kind of talking about what we've got on for the day, any blockers that we might have. And then I'll spend some time doing, it depends kind of what kind of project I'm working on. So I've just been given a project. So I started off by doing some research, talking to other people that have worked on similar projects to kind of get an understanding of what kind of things needed for the project. And then also talking to product owners to figure out what is they want from this. And then it's kind of hard to talk about like an average day because it can be so varied, but for an average project, you would start off by doing like research, competitor analysis, understanding what is being asked of you, like defining the problem, and then going on to like sketching, wireframing, and then going on to actual building the visual design. And then after that, it would be going to present it, test it, and then iterate based on the feedback that you get. So yeah, that's kind of.
Somebody's asked how much coding, if any, do you do on a daily basis?
I do 0 coding.
Simple answer. Are there any more questions for UX design? Let's give it a couple of seconds. Otherwise, we can ask, if you do, we can ask them at the end once the speakers have all spoken. Okay, so we'll move on to the next area. Thanks, Jayde-Olivia. So our next area is product management, and our speaker is going to be Jimbo. Jean is a product manager with a software engineering background. Jean has worked in startups, large corporations, and in academia. And Jean believes that there's room for anyone like you in tech.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can see me and hear me okay. I'm going to guess that's a yes. So I'll just talk a little bit about what I do and myself. So I'm Jimbo. I'm a product manager. At the moment, I work for a startup called Splend. My background is in software engineering. So I transitioned into product management. So I'll start by defining what product management is. So a little warning, product management, there's not a conclusive definition of what that is. Different companies see it differently. In some companies, they call product managers product owners. There's some overlap there. I'll get into that a bit later. So what is product management? Very often it's described as a role that sits at this intersection of UX, like Jade, technology, and the business. So the product manager is like the cog that sits between these cross-functional areas and makes sure that the whole product is a success. Maybe the next question would be, so what is a product? A product can be anything. It can be a pen, your mobile phone, or a laptop. But in this case, we're talking about digital products, and they vary in size. So if you're a product manager at Facebook, for example, Facebook is a massive product, and it's made up of lots and lots and lots of little products. So it has lots and lots and lots of product managers. For example, the search feature itself is a product. It might actually have several product managers working on it. The timeline itself, the posts, the comments, the videos, these are all separate products within Facebook. But there are some companies that are maybe more early stage where they only have one single product in the whole company, or they have just a handful of them. So it really varies in size and scope of what you're actually doing. The other word in product management, aside from product, is manager. But you're not actually managing anyone, and ideally you shouldn't manage anyone. Your job is actually to succeed by influencing and building consensus and bringing people together. So I'd say that, I said earlier that product managers are sometimes called product owners. There's some overlap there, there's some differences. I think product owner tends to come more from like the Scrum side of things, but that's a whole other conversation. And sometimes product management is confused with project management. So I'm gonna slow down so that when I say product and project, you can differentiate. So product management and project management are not the same. Although in some companies, a product manager will be doing some project management. So some of those skills would be relevant in the role depending on the company. So I'll use one major distinction between product and project management. A project manager is responsible for delivering a project on time within budget and making sure that the resources that are available to complete that project. So a project has a much shorter life cycle than a product. A product manager, on the other hand, like myself, is responsible for the success of a product by reaching some specific goals. For example, you want to have a certain number of monthly users visiting your website or something like that. So I'll skip into the skills you need as a product manager. There's lots and lots of them because you're doing lots of different things. And I'd say communication is one massive one. You sit at the intersection of so many different teams. So it's essential that you're communicating with people. You're getting messages from one side to the other, and you're making sure the right people are in the room when different things are being discussed. And you're also talking to customers and users and other stakeholders in the business. So you're talking to marketing, you're talking to people from the business side of things. Another major skill is empathy. That was mentioned earlier as well. So you will need to understand where people are coming from. You also need to understand what your users or your customers want and to empathize with them in order to actually deliver it and to also understand what their pain points are. But you also need that when you're communicating because you're trying to make sure that everything is working together to a shared common goal. Another major one, I think more relevant as time goes on, is data analysis. You'll be tracking metrics. So often the goal would be tied to a metric. A metric is basically a way to measure whether or not you're achieving the thing that you're trying to achieve. So you say, I want to have 100 people doing this action by the time we ship out this specific feature. So you want to be familiar with data and understanding metrics, creating them or defining the metrics that you want to measure, and then taking steps to make sure that the product actually achieves those goals. Another major skill is prioritization. Prioritization is about figuring out what's the most important and most valuable thing you should do next. So when you're making digital products, you have 35 different possible things you could do. So you have to figure out which is the thing that you should do next. What should you focus on first? So it could be the one that makes you the most money. It could be the one that will make your users' lives easier. It could be the feature that makes your product faster. So there are many different things. You're going to have to look at different trade-offs and make a decision. And when you make this decision, your responsibility as a product manager is to have a success, make your product successful. So you have to make sure that these decisions are in line with whatever it is you're trying to do. I think another major thing is research. You have to, figure out what's going on in the market, figuring out what's going on in trends related to whatever it is you're trying to build. And you also have to understand what's going on in technology. So not all product managers are technologists. So I think that's a nice segue into how do you become a product manager? I came from software engineering background, which is great because then I have that tech side of things sorted. I kind of have to do a bit more work in UX. I have to do a bit more work on the business side. But there's no degree for product management. You cannot be an expert at all these things. So what most people are is they transition from a different role into product management. So this is why I like to say there's room for everybody. So since there's no degree or a specific course you can do, there's lots of other resources like tons and tons of blogs, tons and tons of conferences, lots of great YouTube channels. There's some Udemy courses. I mean, you're not going to get a Udemy certificate that gets you a job, but they will introduce you to some of the topics that you need to understand to become a great product manager. And most product managers, because they come from different roles, they tend to have a particular specialty. And so I really encourage people to look into the role and see if you can find one that fits your background. If you're someone who's coming from healthcare and you want to get into tech, product management in health tech could be really good for you because you have an understanding of the healthcare side. And a lot of the other skills are transferable. You probably already know how to communicate. You probably already know how to empathize. So really think about what you do have if you're considering going into a product management role. It's really about what do I have? What I don't have, then what can I do to actually learn that? So to transition, there's some books I can recommend. I've got a few here. This is a very popular one. You'll see I've got like my bookmarks. It's called Hooked. It's a really interesting one. It talks about how you can build habit-forming products. I'll put these in the chat, so don't worry about if you didn't see them. This is a very popular one, and this guy is probably the most famous product management leader. He's called Marty Kagan. Very good book to understand how product management tends to work nowadays in, I guess, a more modern and mature technology industry. Another good one is Lean Product Playbook. So I'll put these in the chats.
Great, thank you, Jean. So somebody's asked why you made the switch into product management. So what was it that enticed you?
So I personally did that because I'm really passionate about being close to where the users are. I really care about, the product that they get, is it what they actually needed? So it made sense for me. I also get really excited about finding out the common thread of problems that that users have. And I like solving that and figuring out what is the one thing I do that will make 30% of the users that we have happy. That is the kind of thing that gives me a thrill. And because I come from a tech background and I really love technology, it's a great front seat to seeing how technology can actually transform people's lives. So it's a great role if that's the kind of thing that you care about.
And do you do any coding now as a product manager?
So product managers don't usually code. So depending on the maturity of the company, if it's a company that is still early stages, it might be needed. So it really just depends, but you certainly do not need to know how to code to become a product manager. More important is to just keep an eye on what's going on in technological trends and technological capability. So just know in general, what can AWS provide for you? Because one day you might be looking into, maybe we might need to move to AWS because it gives us this thing that makes the product better and therefore makes the product a success.
So that actually kind of nicely leads on to the next question about staying on top of tech trends. So what kind of resources do you use to kind of stay on top of these trends?
Right, so it varies a lot because there's too many things going on out there. It's more I think it's better to decide to stick to a particular thing that you are interested in, and therefore it will be easier to follow. So one thing I would do is, blogs of interest, follow personalities online who are also of interest that talk a lot about what it is they do. In terms of technological trends, it also gets a little murky there because there's just so many of them. So I think stick to your passions because one, you like it already anyway, and then two, it will be more easy to find and stick to those resources. And books they're still in fashion, so I highly encourage people to keep reading.
That's good to know. I kind of would have thought that books might get outdated quite quickly, but it's good to know that they're a good resource.
Yeah, I mean, there's always gems in there. They do get outdated quickly, and that's a really important point. But they tend to be a good place to start, or to just have a solid foundation of something if you have interest in it.
Amazing. So Ava's asked, what's the best route to get into product management as a graduate? A startup, a bigger tech company? Can you go straight into this role?
Right. So there are some the big FANG companies have associate project manager roles that graduates can go into. However, they are highly competitive. They are so competitive that I think I only know one person in the real world who has actually ever gotten that role. I tried for many years, but it's one of those things where I wouldn't fuss about that. There are very few of them. It's difficult. If you're coming straight from graduate role, definitely give that a try. There's nothing wrong with giving that a shot, going for an associate product manager role, or APM as they're called. But I would say there are also junior product management roles. I think a good thing that you can do for yourself is have some side projects you can do. And just to have an idea of what it's like to build a product. It doesn't have to be successful. It doesn't have to have a lot of people using it. It doesn't even have to have a single person using it. Just walking through that process and understanding, I think, is a good place to start. Then there's no particular magic bullet to becoming a product manager. You just need to look at the skills that are needed, see the ones that you already have, and then fill the gaps that you don't have.
Great. So Charlene has asked, how is product management different to technical architecture and delivery management?
Ooh, I'm not really sure about delivery management. I feel like I might be very wrong, so don't take my word for it, but I think delivery management is more close to project management. And I think what was the other one? Was technical architecture?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very different. So now that's highly technical. It's about the pieces in the tech side that come together. And product managers rarely touch that. Product managers are more like, this is the goal. We want to have this feature. We want to have this button that when they press it, it does this thing. So you're caring more about how all these things come together rather than any specific thing. It is very much a jack of all tradesy type of role as opposed to a specialism. And I feel like the other two are kind of specialisms. So product management, you are thinking, you're the one who's talking to the technical architect about things. You're the one engaging them in a conversation and making sure that wherever they need to be involved, they're involved, but you don't actually dig your fingers into things like architecture at all.
So we've got a question from Kathy on YouTube, and she's asking, what is the most successful or memorable product or feature that you've accomplished as a product manager? So that's a big question.
That's a really good question. I would say something I'm really proud of is some years ago, I was kind of working like multiple roles, but there was a bit of product-y stuff in there. I would say the thing that I was really proud of is making sure that we had set up some sort of a support system for our users. My team was very small. We were literally 5 people, and we were trying to make sure that all our users from all over the world, some people are in Australia calling us at 3 a.m. I couldn't wake up at 3 a.m. to talk to people in Australia. I also need my sleep. So I kind of put together a system that would help people have like self-service support so they could ask their own questions. The reason why I'm proud of it is, one, nobody asked me to do it. I did it because it needed to get done. I'm also proud of it because I can still see that it's still there, even though I left the company a long time ago.
Awesome. So Rashida, I hope I said that right, has said, you mentioned about health professionals switching to product management. Do you find that there are a lot of transferable skills there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So product managers can come from tech, they can come from business, they can come from UX, they can come from any other role in the tech industry. But one thing that anyone outside of tech can do is, if you're already a specialist in something, you're already a subject matter expert in something, then you could be a product manager in that particular industry where it intersects with tech. For example, there are some, when you look at health tech, you look at companies where they are trying to help you find appointments, medical appointments or something like that. If you are someone who was working in a clinic and you're the one who's trying to get people to get appointments, then you can go to the technology company with your transferable skills and also your deep knowledge of the problems that happen when you are trying to match people into their appointments. So you're already a subject matter expert. A product manager coming from technology may know technology, but they do not know that. So you do actually have an upper hand. So there are other transferable skills that are soft skills, like communication and stakeholder management, that you already bring from wherever you are working in healthcare. Because you are dealing with people all the time. You're dealing with patients, you're dealing with medical staff, and you're dealing with all other manner of people. So there's tons of transferable skills. I encourage anyone in any role, always pay attention to the skills that you have been not paying attention to, that you actually have gained throughout your career that are transferable. And especially we're in this Corona times right now, it's going to be very important to pay attention to what your transferable skills are, because things are going to be changing.
Amazing, thank you, Jean. So any one of us could be product managers. It's great news.
You know what? We need more Black women as product managers.
Great. If you've got any more questions for Jean, we'll ask them at the end. So we'll move on to data science now. So thank you, Jean. Let me just put this. So for data science, we've got Eva Muiruri speaking for us. Eva is a data enthusiast and a self-proclaimed tree hugger. She first began coding during her PhD in forest ecology and found her way into a tech career after a brief stint as a university lecturer and a quarter-life crisis. She began her data science career in the civil service and now works at a tech firm solving business problems through data. So over to you, Eva.
Thank you, Faith. Really excited to be here and to have heard all of you amazing people in all your different roles. I will try to give a bit of an overview about who I am, what I do, why I love my work, and I guess some of the things that I wish that I had known at the outset of my journey. So I work as a data science consultant. I spend most of my time trying to answer interesting and challenging problems from a variety of clients. I've worked in the public sector, I've worked for clients in the private sector as well. I primarily use R and Python when I do get around to programming, but I'll talk a bit more around, the additional skills that are at the core of being a good data scientist. Some of the things that I absolutely love about my job now, I really get to be the person who delivers the answers. I get to be the person who solves the problems. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's it says something about me, but I love that type of work. It's so satisfying to be able to bring new insight that they didn't know that they had. I typically have quite similar days as was what has been described already. Morning stand-ups, understanding what our challenges are for the day, figuring out what questions we're going to try to answer, what data we need, what data we have, what problems we have with the data, and how we're going to analyze it in either in a series of steps, or and also considering how we're going to visualize and communicate our data. The key part about data science is, to me, is that it's not just about machine learning, it's not just about artificial intelligence. There's so much more that's just about understanding the context through which data has come. I got into data science during my PhD. I never thought I'd ever be in tech, or I'd ever be, somebody who codes. And I just ended up working on some historical data sets that were too big to manage in Excel, and somebody, pointed me in the right direction, like go learn to program, girl. You'll get the hang of it eventually, and you'll be able to you'll be able to tackle these problems in your PhD. I started to think about what else I could do after after I'd finished my degree, and was feeling a bit sort of stuck. And my first role was in the civil service, working at a government agency, applying a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same skills, answering policy questions through data that we'd collected. I think one of the things that has switched now, since I've recently moved in the last 6 months into my role now as a consultant, there's a very different focus and a different challenge around being in the private sector. It's really interesting to see how I've gone from answering quite theoretical problems to really being asked directly, how are you going to save me money today? How are you going to help me tackle this problem in our pipeline or in our supply chain? And especially now during COVID-19, there have been so many interesting and challenging problems from all kinds of sectors. And I think it takes me to kind of the next thing I really wanted to talk about, was around the things I really wish that I had known. The core part of data science is being aware and able to apply statistics and mathematical concepts to data, to take your spreadsheet or database and turn it into something that really is a lot more. There's a lot more than that. I think I'd say for anybody new or looking to get into data science, I would really encourage you to spend time learning about statistics. There's some great online courses around that are data science or machine learning courses, which are great. They'll teach you a lot about programming. Not all of them cover the real maths and statistics that you need to be a great data scientist. I will try to link some of the ones that I've used, and the courses that I've also used to upskill myself. But it's also consider that it's also a never-ending journey, that you're never really done learning about stats. There's always a new method. There's always something. There's always a new challenge with the data that we have. I think the second thing that I wish I'd known is that you can't ever underestimate the power of visualizing your data. You can do. You can build all sorts of beautiful artificial intelligence systems, but sometimes the power just comes in your graph, and a lot of the message and the delivery that you can give is just how have you chosen to visualize your data. And on the flip side, you see some really great pieces of work that completely fall apart because they've chosen the wrong way to communicate it. So don't just work on your statistics, don't just work on your programming, but also consider that third pillar of how do you communicate and visualize your work. My third tip would be to do the things that are most painful and annoying and irritating that you always want to avoid. I mean, I'll speak from personal experience. I really wanted to I always got a bit lazy and just went back to Excel and just, just delete that row because I don't have to deal with it in programming. And actually, it took me probably a year or two before I decided, enough's enough. It might take you two seconds in Excel, but actually by the time you're starting to really build and work on databases, especially, you need to be able to do those things. And I think it also builds into a much bigger point that just as life is really messy, data is so messy. I think maybe maybe I can't speak for other tech areas, but I do feel like we deal with so many more, we deal with so many more human problems. If the data wasn't collected in January because somebody was off that month or on holiday, they've changed how they've decided to define a particular column, and we're seeing all of this play out during this pandemic as well. Like, goodness knows how many discussions they've been around, how do we even count the number of people who've died? And I think just that appreciation and interrogation, appreciation of the messiness of data, and a consistent willingness to challenge and verify that your understanding of the data is as the same as the people who are offering it to you or asking you questions of it. And I think the last one that I wanted to share is a top tip from, actually asked my colleague today. She might be on the call. This is my first time in my whole career ever working with an all-female team and a team with a Black woman, which is just incredible. And that Black woman is also a data scientist. So that's like a complete progress considering I've always worked around men. But today her top tip was to put people over your data. And I think she's totally right that, we can do all these fantastic bits of work that are great, but what does it matter if it's not relevant? So stay in touch and stay in tune with whoever you're serving, whatever question that you're answering, and be aware that sometimes what you're taught or what you learn in at university or in particular courses is a nice, neat problem, and that's not necessarily what life will be like in an actual career. So learn to face into those challenges in your career, and I guess also in life.
Amazing, thank you, Eva. There's a lot of questions, so I'm just going to dive in. Could you tell us the difference between a data analyst, a data scientist, and a data engineer?
So I was debating around this question. I would say a data analyst is primarily focused on bringing insight through visualizations. Occasionally, they might get into statistics, but it isn't the primary part of their role. That can vary, though. I will say that I've definitely seen roles that have been advertised as a data science role, but actually the expectations on the ground really aren't that. Likewise, the opposite, roles that are advertised as a data analyst role, but actually, you get there and the expectations are for you to build the biggest deep learning network they could. So I would, at this early stage when the career path is so new, do your due diligence, understand what the expectations of the role are. The more chances are, if it's called data science, that's going to be very statistics and maths heavy. Data engineering, on the other hand, so far I've seen it be quite separate and distinguished. It's very much around how do you manipulate and prepare data and manage it. I think I haven't known many data engineers in my career so far, just due to the nature of the path that I've taken. But I kind of consider that as kind of the pre-processing work before any further analysis or data science work can take place.
So you mentioned math and statistics as being integral to kind of what you do. Is there like a certain level you need to apply for jobs? Like, do you need a degree in maths and statistics, or are online courses enough?
I think it really varies. I think I would say that if you're totally new and haven't come from any kind of numerate degree or background or experience, then I would go for some of the apprenticeships and jobs that are being advertised in the civil service. The civil service can be a great place to really pick up skills that are otherwise quite difficult to acquire in the private sector. The downside is they have very specific ways of doing certain things. So when it comes to wanting to innovate and do brand new things, it can be difficult. But certainly I'd recommend that the courses will give you the beginnings of that, but really you need experience. You need to work with more different types of data to prove and validate your knowledge.
There are a lot of questions about the programming language, which programming languages to use. There's mentions of SQL and Python. Are those the ones you would recommend, or are there any others?
It very much depends. The people, the data scientists that I know in my circle, some of them have come from places where, you know, R was king. Others have been in places where, you know, Python was Python or nothing. I would say I wouldn't necessarily worry about which one you choose. If you're particularly interested in only implementing artificial intelligence or machine learning work, then I'd say Python would be the thing to focus on. I think if you want to be more diverse and be able to tackle more challenging projects from a statistical basis, not to say that artificial intelligence is not challenging, it's just the framework and the tools available are more detailed in Python for AI than they are in R at the moment. So R is easier to learn. So if you're brand new to it, I think you can pick that up much faster than Python.
So we've got one question here. Is there anything that you would recommend not to do, or something that you wish you were told that would have saved you time? It's quite a difficult question.
That's hard. Yeah. What would I not do? I think it goes back to that last point of that you need to be very careful about knowing that you're answering the question with the data that you have. I think it's very easy to get carried away, analyze your data to death, but actually never produce anything that's useful for the people who asked you those questions. So definitely be sensitive and aware of your root question, and always sense check and revert back to those questions rather than running off with new data.
And just to end, before we kind of open it up to everyone, what is it like working with, like, I think you said all female team or mostly females, and having a Black woman there? What kind of difference has that made to you?
I mean, where do I even start? So for context, like since primary school, I've basically only ever been in maths and physics classes with men. That changed a bit when I went into biology, but went back to being completely male dominated. It's been an absolutely fantastic and refreshing change, and just to be surrounded by people who maybe want to talk about similar things to me as well, and have similar perspectives to me is just fantastic. So I really am excited to have and see more data scientists that look like me or sound like me come into this space. And And yeah, hopefully I will get to meet some of you at some point. It would be great.
Yes. Okay, so thank you, Eva. I'm just going to open it up to questions to any of our speakers. So I guess any of you can chip in if you want to answer. One popular question that we've had on Slido is, I'm trying to get into a tech career as an older person in their mid-30s. Is it possible, or would you be seen as too old?
I can take that one.
Okay, we'll go Jean
Is
and
it
then
possible?
Yasmin.
Nothing is impossible. Honestly, I'd seriously encourage it. Now, something that comes with age and that experience are some of these transferable soft skills that I was talking about earlier. When you're used to working in whatever working environment you have, you've dealt with, the experience you have may not be necessarily tech, but you may have skills around dealing with people, dealing with challenges, being resilient. Those are things that matter. If you're a product manager, you will try 70 different ideas and maybe only 5 of them will actually succeed. So you need resilience. I'm just giving one example of a skill. So really pay attention to what you have acquired so far. Don't take for granted that if you've been here 30 plus whatever years, that is 30 plus years of experience in something. So don't ignore what you already have. It's really important to be able to translate what you've done, how you've worked, how you've succeeded, things you've learned the hard way into a tech career. That's just one thing. I think Yasmin also wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, tech is, I wouldn't say relatively easy necessarily to say, but if you've got a passion for something, definitely don't let age stop you. There's a lot of people that I know that actually enter tech in their mid-30s, and then, like Jean was saying, because of their life experience, by the time they were 40, which would have meant they were 5 years in the tech game, they actually started their own consultancy or company. So there are pros and cons, if that makes sense, but definitely think of the pros. I'll just say, go with it. Go with your gut feeling.
So another popular question that we've had is kind of about mentorship and whether that's been beneficial to any of you guys. Do either of you have mentors?
Yeah, I do.
How did you find your mentor? What do they provide?
I would say a mentor provides, especially if they're older, they provide kind of like cheat codes to the game. Because I've always said that, you know, I've met so many people that have been, you know, the same age as me or even younger, and they've got such a great technical mind. But because tech has the ability to make you a lot of money quite quickly, it gets to a point where I would say 50% of the role is actually doing the job technically, and another 50% is actually perception. So sometimes I believe that your mentor can kind of give you an outward look on who you are, how you are perceived, and can kind of adapt some level of like a chameleon characteristics to kind of like fit or to suit in different environments. They can kind of give you a deeper insight into the corporate or to the working world and be honest in any mistakes that they've made. So it provides a kind of a level of allyship. So I definitely would say that everyone should, if necessarily, get a mentor, somebody that you aspire to be like.
And Jade and Eva or Jean, do you have mentors as well?
Yeah, I have plenty.
Yeah.
I always say this, have several mentors, they all give you something different. But mentors is just one type of relationship where someone who, you know, kind of is ahead of you can help you. There's coaching, which I think is also very good, especially when you're starting out, you don't really know what you're doing, what the direction you want to go. And then there's moaching, which is a mixture of mentoring and coaching. And I think there's another kind of relationship. This is when sponsorship, this is when someone in a role that has some influence uses their name, right, allows you to use their name or something, or, you know, uses the influence that they have to get you ahead. It's really important to have sponsors, mentors, and coaches. I have several mentors because they teach me different things. Some people help me with the day-to-day stuff. Some people help me with organizational stuff. So I used to work at the BBC, massive organization. If you don't know people, you don't really know, you don't really have access to things. So they helped introduce me to people. They told me who I should talk to. And then you can also have mentors who just help you with maybe the more people side of things. So they all have their own strengths. So you basically get a mentor based on whatever strengths that you want to develop or things you want to improve.
Yeah, so like Eva, I have quite a few mentors as well. I have one that focuses on kind of design stuff. So skills that I want to develop in as a designer. And then I have one that kind of helps me with managing stakeholders, which is also a really big part of design. And then I have one that is more focused around, so they're like a Black person in leadership. So it's just something that will help me to kind of get to where I want to be, and they can talk to me about any struggles that they've had to overcome and how they've overcome them.
Eva, do you have a mentor as well? Or maybe you can explain how to go about getting a mentor, because that's one of the other questions coming through.
I have, like the others, several. Always, always aim to build your network and expand the number of people who can teach you something new. I would add to Jean's list that I think the other thing that we all should have are cheerleaders. This is a tough sector sometimes to be in, and especially when you're in a minority group, having people to tell you to speak up about the things that to claim and shout out about the great work that you're doing is really important. I would say that finding mentors, it's definitely a conversation that I've had many times before. I think, to me, they can be really great to have quite a structured relationship, and I think it's almost better to foster or create that kind of dynamic with the people you work with. So requesting regular feedback, it doesn't actually have to be a formal can you be my mentor conversation. If anything, that can make it it adds formality where there doesn't necessarily need to be one. It's a personal relationship. So I'd say reach out to the people you know already. The chances are there are things that they can teach you. And I think also be active on also on social media where you can. I think one of the greatest pieces of advice I got was from messaging somebody on Twitter.
I just wanted to add to that as well, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to people on LinkedIn. I've had people reach out to me, and I know people that have reached out to other people. So someone that does something that you do and you just want advice from them, or for them to review your portfolio and give you feedback, don't be afraid to reach out, because there are a lot of people that are willing to help and want to help and share their knowledge and experience.
Awesome. So this question was for Yasmin, but I guess all of you can chip in on it. So this is, what advice would you give to a female wanting to start in DevOps or any of the areas? Because there's not many females in the industry. So maybe if we start with you, Yasmin.
What advice would I give? I think it's pretty similar to what the rest of the women were saying. And I did mention this in my blog, don't be afraid to be a beg. I would say I'm 27, and a lot of the opportunities that I got was literally just for my zeal and passion of, I think a part of me was kind of I have gone for roles, and later on when I've kind of gone deep in the industry and found my worth, I have been underpaid. But it's just for the fact that I was just maybe the token Black girl, just fun, really wanting to get into tech. And that's how I got into DevOps. A person basically gave me a chance, and when a company really likes you, if anything, they really want to retain you, so they will mold a role around you and give you opportunity to say, hey, this is how we're doing it. You're young, you're innovative, what ideas do you have next? So in regards to, how to get in DevOps, be a beg. What I usually say, I'm quite big on the power of attraction and manifestation. Think of who you are, what you want to be, then think of the job title. So you want to go into DevOps, go on Google, entry level, or I don't know, DevOps engineer. Look at your CV, match up your experience, match up what's on the job spec, and tally up what you have and what you don't have. Anything that you don't have, go ahead and study it. And then you go on LinkedIn, you brand yourself. Wow, this read was really good. Just read this article in DevOps. Hey, I really want to, do you know what I mean? That's how kind of I done it, if that makes sense. I never was afraid to kind of go for jobs above me. So even if, let's say, you're on a 35K salary and there's a DevOps role for 50 to 60K, some companies, especially the smaller boutiques, they kind of just want a quick hire. So you will probably go in at 45, which is about 5K lower than what they were looking to invest, but they would rather use a 5K to nurture invest you because they believe that you're young and you have retainership. So yeah, just go out of your way, be a beg, do lots of open source projects. There is no degree to get into DevOps, but I would just say choose a language to be very proficient in. In fact, I should probably copy and paste my blog for you guys to read.
I think we've already done that actually for you.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's going to go viral again.
I just wanted to say as well that there's like a statistic that says that men are more likely to go for a role that they're not 100% qualified for than women are. So even if you see a role that you don't tick all the boxes for, still apply for it because
yeah.
You know.
Okay, so there is a question actually for UX specific, Jade. It says, for design reviews, do you have a framework of questions that you ask yourself to understand how the design, so interaction and visual, can arrive at the solution?
Say that again, sorry.
So is there like a framework of questions that you ask yourself when you're kind of creating a project and you want to kind of create a solution for a problem?
Yeah, I would say, especially for like UX and stuff, it's important to ask like, is this accessible? Is this usable? Does it meet the brief requirements? So I think definitely defining exactly what is being asked of you. Asking, when you start a project, asking questions is like one of the most important things you can do. So speak to people that are in data, speak to just ask loads of questions to fully get all the information that you need before you start a project.
Amazing. So I've got so many questions. So Eva, someone's asked, what kind of projects or tasks do you work on as a data scientist?
So that's really variable. In my current role, I'm a consultant, which means that I work on projects with a variety of clients and a variety of problems. And honestly, the landscape can change from one day to the next. I think I've done some really interesting work, which I think I can talk about around predicting crime recently, just based on seasonal and historical data. Done some work around supply chain modeling. I've done some image recognition work to identify fish and underwater creatures from cameras. Also done some image recognition work in relation to forests and understanding the amount of damage to leaves that insects do. What else have I done? I think that captures most some of the things that I'm most proud of that I can talk about. There's a bunch of other things that I would love to say, but yeah, I can't talk about them right now. But I'm sure we can catch up on offline one day.
Yes, sorry, I'm just going through the questions. So I guess Jean, you can answer this one hopefully. Fizzolac has asked, how would you keep up learning to code or keeping up with tech if you're not doing a degree in computer science? So this person is doing an English degree, but they're trying to learn to code and see how it intersects with their interests.
Oh,
sorry, that was
me?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay, cool. No, I just wasn't sure. How do you keep up? I think today the most important thing you could do is follow some people online. Honestly, follow Yasmin. Yasmin is awesome. There's lots of people in CBF. Follow Coding Black Females people on social media, because the thing about tech is that because it's ever evolving, there's always discussion. And so people are talking on social media, and that's free. That's free. That is a great place to see what opinions are out there. Form your own opinion when you try stuff out. And yeah, read a lot of blogs. I mean, and sign up to newsletters. Sign up to what people call thought leaders. I mean, it's a wishy-washy word, but if you follow people on social media and stuff, you start to have an understanding of some of the things that are trending. If you're interested in an area, like I said before, definitely follow people who are thought leaders in that area. How can you find a thought leader? Look at conferences that are coming up, see who the speakers are. And in particular, I always encourage people to make sure that the people you're following or where you're getting your ideas from is diverse. We're always talking diversity, but we also have to be responsible in that. So I try to make sure that I follow people from all over the world, because you have no idea what you're going to learn. I always say, big thing, follow Black women, because Black women tend to have a slightly different perspective from most other demographics, because we kind of are like underdogs. And as a result, we kind of looking at things from a completely different corner than other people are looking. So definitely do that and support each other. I think finding thought leaders, Twitter has like topics or something you can follow. I don't really like that because it tends to bubble up the already popular people and doesn't find you like niche voices. So make sure that whoever you're following is diverse and they're from all over the world. If you put yourself in a particular market or location, you don't really understand what's going on in the rest of the world. And when world events like coronavirus are happening, you're unaware of what's really coming your way, whether it's another pandemic or something else. So it's really good to have that sense of universal awareness.
Amazing. So, sorry, someone gonna speak?
Yeah, also I was going to say, in addition to what Jean was saying, don't be pressured to learn every coding language. Like when I graduated, I didn't realize how broad tech was. I just thought tech was coding. And I felt like I was, dare I say, bullied into just knowing everything. So don't fall into the trap of being a master of everything, being a, what's the thing? Being a, like, you know everything, but you're a master of none. Like make sure you specialize in something, and it will really help, especially as a Black woman in coding that could probably earn a lot of money with your imposter syndrome, if that makes sense. Because sometimes, you know, certain jobs want to pay you. I'm like, y'all really want to pay me this? Kind of scary, just like, oh, but yeah. And don't be afraid to take on side projects. So I mentioned in my blog after it went viral that, you know, I make 6 figures. I make 80K from one job and 70K USD, which is about 55K British pounds combined together. That's 130. That's from 2 separate projects. Don't be afraid to open up a limited company, run it through that. So yeah, just that's how you can also kind of like build your portfolio. I would also say try not to chase money, if that makes sense, but at the same time, know your worth. And if you want any more advice, I'll send a link in the chat where I kind of give like mentorship lessons and like how to choose what kind of career you want in tech, because there are so many.
So we're coming up to the end. So there's been a lot of questions, and I'm sure you've got a lot of like budding mentees. So I'm just going to go around the speakers, and if you've got like a social media handle or somewhere people can find you, just let us know. So I'll go alphabetically. So Eva, where can people find you?
I can be found on Twitter. I will add my @ to the chat in just a second, but it's Eva WM.
And Jayde-Olivia?
I can be found on LinkedIn or Instagram. My Instagram is Jayde with a Y, JAYDE _Olivia, and LinkedIn is just Jayde-Olivia Sandy.
And Jean?
You can find me most places as Jimbo, whether that's LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter. I prefer Twitter, so find me there.
And Yasmin, I know you're posting some things in the chat.
Yeah, Instagram, Taylor Sky. It's kind of like my tech alter ego. Yeah. Taylor Sky. LinkedIn is just boring Yasmin Taylor, and I'm off to for the moment because it's crazy people on there.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much to all of our speakers for spending their time with us this evening even. Thank you to Charlene for assisting me today, and thank you to our audience on YouTube and here on Zoom. This has been a really popular event, so thank you for all turning up. This video is actually going to go onto YouTube afterwards, so if you want to play it back or if you want to share it with someone, it will be there for you to use. There's still a lot of questions that haven't been answered, so I'm going to try and collate them and do something with them afterwards and get the information out to you as well as the slides. And then lastly, we'll probably send a feedback form tomorrow. So if you've got any feedback about this event, what you enjoyed, what could be improved, what events you want to see more of, then just let us know in that form. Otherwise, our next event is on the 26th of May, and hopefully we'll see you then. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you to Faith for running the session. It was absolutely amazing. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you so much to all the panelists. That was fantastic. I did want to add, I don't know if you guys would be up for it, but maybe we could try and do those questions as a quick podcast session, perhaps. So it's something that we're looking at, is putting podcasts together. So maybe we could collate the questions and have like a data science section, a UX section, and then just try and just answer loads of questions and upload them. But yeah, thank you.
There's a lot of questions.
Yeah, a lot of questions. Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.